So welcome to the Implementation Advisory Subcommittee meeting on violations of penalties. Today is March 7th, 2025. And we're going to start with a brief roll call vote. We just need you to verbally say whether or not you're here. Terrence?
Here.
Beth?
Here.
Great, thank you. Okay, so I sent along the agenda. I think that this may be our last meeting. Most of the subcommittees are beginning to shut down because they got to the point where they made a recommendation. So if you all can make a recommendation at the end of this meeting, there's no need for the subcommittee to meet again. But if not, we can always find another time to meet too. So, don't feel like you have to rush if there's more to discuss. Today we're going to be talking, I'm going to walk through some elements of the fact sheet. I'm going to show you a couple items around the charter constraints. And then we'll talk about the typical categories of violations, the typical process for redress, and then the vote to recommend. I actually don't think we really need to recommend every part of the policy, because I think what we can do, and what most programs do, is they say, they might say something like the penalties will be set by administrative rule, and that can be set another time. So I don't think we have to actually individually go through every penalty and be like, this is 10,000, this is 5,000, blah blah blah. I don't think we have to do that. I think it's kind of more big picture stuff, which is what is the process for when there's a penalty assessed, what can people do, and how can campaigns respond and be treated fairly. So I think that's more the goal for today. Before we dive in, are there any questions? Okay, great. We're just reviewing what we discussed before. So, the previous meeting takeaways, we had two agreements. One was the core value is not to over penalize candidates. We want to allow for candidates to make mistakes. We want to reduce the hurdles for diverse candidates to be able to participate. And we want the staff of the program to be helpful and responsive to candidates when they call in with questions. So, penalties and those are a tool in the tool belt to make sure people follow the rules. But most of the time people, when they violate the rules, is by accident. And we don't want to be penalizing people for accidents over and over again. Especially these are small grassroots campaigns that don't typically have a lot of resources. And, if we're taking up their time and our resources with penalties, that means they really can't compete. So we want to be very careful about how we apply penalties. I think we talked a little bit about the focus on cure periods, applying ratio penalties, minimum, maximum amounts. Again, I don't think we have to go into great depth about that today, actually. I think there's lots of time to develop those, that granular level of the rules too. I will turn your attention to first, let's talk about the Multnomah County Charter. So if you remember, as a refresher, in 2016, Multnomah County voters amended the county charter to pass a provision around campaign finance. And there is no carve out for public matching programs. The city of Portland has its own carve out when it has its own charter for the city charter. So the city of Portland can kind of make its own rules. We don't have that kind of carve out in the Multnomah County Charter. So we have more restrictions about what we can do. We can certainly make rules for the program, but there are some things that are already determined by the charter. They kind of tie our hands in being able to write our own rules. And so there's one section of the charter here that's particularly relevant, and I'm going to just find it real quickly for you. Oh yeah. So I'll just share my screen so you all can see it with me. There we go. Okay, so there's one section here. It says each violation of any provision in this section shall be punishable by imposition of a civil fine, which is not less than 2 or more than 20 times the amount of the unlawful contribution or expenditure. So what that means is if there is in our case, particularly if there's like a contribution that would violate the rules. Like let's say someone gave a larger contribution than they're allowed to give. The smallest the penalty can be is 2 times that amount, and the largest it can be is 20 times that amount. So I don't think we can write rules that would exact a larger penalty than that or a smaller penalty than that. Terrence, go ahead.
Can we, on the other hand, write rules that make sure that is not the first, second, or third option? Right.
Yes.
That's how I look at it. Like we don't. The thought of somebody can be like you should be proven almost malicious intent before we're trying to double you on any fine.
Yeah. So I was going to talk about that later, but I can just bring it up now. So what the city of Portland does, which I always thought was great, was it has something called a cure period, and 30 days after the violation, the campaign had 30 days after a violation to cure it or fix it, and there'd be no penalty.
Nice.
And like almost 90% of the time, campaigns would comply. They would just, fix it real quickly. It's almost always an accident and no harm, no foul. And so I think as long as we build those in, we don't have to penalize people a lot.
I like that, Daniel. Thank you.
Yeah, but appreciate your point, Terrence. The penalty shouldn't be the first action. It should be like the last thing we do. So I think that's good to know that we have some restrictions on the charter. The IEC is going to take up the issue of a charter amendment later. And so if it might recommend amending the charter in other ways. So if you all want to bring in a possible change in this way to that conversation, you can. So, I don't know if you would want to, but you have the ability to like go to that conversation and say, well, the charter restricts us from a 2 times to 20 times penalty. We actually think we should be able to change it to 1 time to 20 times, or 2 times to 25 times, or whatever. So when we have this, so like I'm not saying you have to do that. I'm just saying like when we have that discussion about the charter amendment, the charter does impact the work this subcommittee does, and so you all definitely have the ability to include, to suggest other changes to the charter too. Does that make sense?
Perfect sense. And let's note, Daniel, I definitely want to address that when it comes time, if at any amendment opportunities. Any thought of a possible 20 times is crazy to me.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah, totally fair to bring that forward when we have the discussion. I'm thinking it'll be either next week or the week after. But yeah, totally fair to bring that up. So I'm going to turn off my stop presenting here. Okay. So just so you know, those right now, those are the parameters we're working in. The second thing is I'll direct you to the fact sheet, and I just broke down what are the typical categories for violations. And again, we don't have to go through every single one and like make our own rules for this. There's plenty of time to do that. But I just want to show you that usually they fall into several buckets. One bucket is reporting. So when campaigns are reporting to us, do they, what if they like report late outside the timeline they're supposed to? What if they don't include everything in the report that they're supposed to? What if they like omit something entirely that they should be reporting? These are reporting issues, and usually they're, especially if you're working with a professional treasurer who does the reporting for you, it's very easy to fix those. But if not, we do have to have like some kind of corrective action for it. The second bucket is contributions. And so, if the most common one is if a campaign takes a donation that's too big or like larger than what's allowed to take. But there's also others, like if it's taking a donation from a source, it's not allowed to take it from. Or if it's collected before they're able to, like outside the timeline. And then I think that's the same with in-kind donations, if it's the size of the in-kind donation or the source of the in-kind donation. And then if you're soliciting or directing contributions to other campaign finance entities, meaning if you're going out there and like, raising, or you're calling donors and saying, hey, give to this person over here. And I think like that is against the rules for the city. And so that's where I borrowed this from. So these contributions are another way that campaigns usually violate the rules. And a lot of times it's pretty easily fixed by a refund. But it's sometimes like we have gotten into situations at the city where campaigns took a donation that was too big and then, they refused to refund it. And then we had to like go through the whole process with them. So again, most of the time people fix these because they're accidents, but sometimes they don't. Another bucket is expenditures. And what I mean by that is matching programs usually have rules about how you can spend the matching funds. And so, every campaign is getting taxpayer funds. We have to be careful about those funds. We want to make sure matching funds are there to help campaigns like, reach out to voters and connect with their constituents and, share their ideas with the public. That's what the matching funds are for. But what they're not for is enriching the candidate personally. And so we have rules about how candidates can spend matching funds. And if people violate the rules, there's usually some penalty attached to it. So, prohibited use of the city matching funds or prohibited expenditures are some things that campaigns are not allowed to spend money on, even if it's the money they raise that are not matching funds. Or they're spending outside the timeline of when they're supposed to spend it. Yeah, Terrence. You're on mute, Terrence.
Yeah, I'm trying to get that figured out. I did have a note about expenditures, if I can just throw that out there, Daniel. So
Sure.
one of the part of the expenditure limits that I was concerned about was the consultant fees. So I was thinking like it should be defined or give examples of what bona fide services are. I don't think that most regular people would know what that means because I really don't. And what I did notice, obviously, I don't disagree that this money should go to consultants because I have issues with consultants. My personal experience is that new folks get riled in and consultants become like leashes, right? I end up letting my consultant firm go when I woke up one day and realized they were doing nothing, Daniel, right? But what happened was when I became a legitimate candidate, all these friends of consultants, right? Right? All these friends of consultants start dropping consultants in my space. And I felt like, oh, I need this consultant. And I end up, I think, 30 grand behind by the time I got my first match from consultant fees. And all I was doing was having a bunch of meetings that didn't actually produce a body of work, right? So, like, they can connect you to like graphic designers and translators and stuff like that. But I do want to have honest dialogue about like limiting like how much can go towards consultants without clear definitions of what that body of work could be, not just you meeting with me every day and you're a consultant and you're charging this regular human being $350 an hour and you're really not producing a body of work. Like that was the biggest thing from my take, Daniel, from this experience was like consultants are leeches. And when it's over, they left me and other folks like myself in a deficit when that money could have been used towards actually building our campaign out, towards our campaign managers and people that are actually working to see us win. So that's a big concern of mine.
Totally appreciate that. Yeah, the subcommittee that's working on those expenditure limits
Okay.
made a series of recommendations,
Okay.
and I think they address consultants in there. So
Okay.
I sent to you yesterday. I sent to everyone on the IAC the report out of what every
Right.
subcommittee has reported on so far. And so definitely check out what the expenditure limits were in that recommendation. And if you feel like something needs to change, like, bring that to the conversation the full AAC has.
Okay, that's what I was
Yeah.
wondering. Okay, I did read through it, Daniel, and I do have some concerns, so I'll bring it at a full body meeting. Thank you. And
Okay, great.
forgive
Yeah,
my
thank you.
lamentations, Beth. That one is like it was an issue for me, so y'all forgive me, but it's touchy.
No problem. No problem. Glad you brought it up. So expenditures, and then the final bucket is usually we have to say these other ones. So like if you refuse to cure a violation or pay the penalty, if you misrepresent the program status as if you were telling the public that you did qualify for matching funds that when you didn't, that usually incurs a penalty. Falsifying documents, that's actually a little bit more common, unfortunately, we realize, because a lot of campaigns, like when they collect donations, they have to get the donors to fill out a form informing that they gave the donation. And sometimes the campaigns just, don't get the donor to do that. They just do it themselves. And so we actually need we need, if the person is saying that they donated it, we really need to be the person who made that donation. Beth.
Looking through this list, and correct me if I'm wrong, but I recall last in November, there was a slight controversy when some candidates were donating to each other's campaigns. Is that one of the violations that's listed here? And I just didn't read it. And are we interested, maybe Terrence, are we interested in adding that as one?
Yeah, I can give some background on that. So last year, the candidates for several candidates for city council were on an email chain where they agreed that they would donate to each other to get the match. So if I was running for office and Beth was running for office, we in this case we would promise we would donate to each other, and then they would also get the matching funds too. And that is illegal. It's actually illegal under state law because you're not allowed to donate to someone with the expectation of something in return. You're not allowed to promise something of material value for a donation. So
can I add a little bit to that, Daniel? Because I went on that email. Thank God, I had all my other issues. I didn't need that. But what I did learn, Daniel, and again, help me understand if I see it the right way, is that this promise of exchange is the issue. It was not that a candidate who actually supported another candidate couldn't donate, but hey, if you give to me, I'll give to you, because it kind of it's manipulative. It go against the intentionality of a clean process. And then you had it was so many candidates, Beth, right? There was enough candidates to get the donor match without any community support, right? And that's what they were pretty much doing. They were going in hey, there's 50 of us. If we just donate with each other, then we will get that first match. And that's it's a little suspect at best, but it's against the law, you know what I mean? At worst. So that's how I interpret it, Daniel. It's malicious, and it goes against the intent of the donor match program, which is to get voter and community buy-in.
Absolutely. Yeah, absolutely. And thank you for pointing that out too. Yeah, candidates can totally give to each other. They genuinely support each other. That's absolutely fine. But if there's a quid pro quo situation, that's when it becomes a problem. So it was against state law, and that's why the state stepped in and was I think pursuing an investigation. I don't know the status of it now. But you all are welcome to write your own rule around that if you want. But also you can defer to the state on that one too.
Yeah, okay. Thank you for that context. I guess I should have known it was a state law, and I probably read that at some point, but just completely blanked right now. Yeah, I think adding it into here could actually possibly introduce people getting violations for genuinely supporting I don't know. I wouldn't want somebody who's if I want to donate to Terrence's campaign and he wants to donate to mine, just because we both support each other, like I wouldn't want that to, you know, obviously there need to be a paper trail for the violations, and I'm sure that there's lots of things in place, but I wouldn't want just like genuine support to be confused for maliciousness. So I think personally deferring to state law on this is probably the best route, but yeah, happy to talk about it more. But
Okay. Terrence, how do you feel about that?
I agree, Beth. And I actually watched it play out, and it did really well. Like, I think one of the things they end up doing, even for us, wasn't involved in it. They were like, look, we kind of just want to take that off the table. And they just kind of, I think it was a few, like, I had like 5 other people that happened after the email, right? Even though I wasn't involved, and they just came back and was like, look, we want to take these off the table. If you want to appeal it, you can. Like, don't feel like you don't have a right to address it. And for me, I was like, no, I'm good. Like, it wasn't that big of a deal to me. But I think we can avoid that by just folks experiencing that and understanding, right? Like, hey, you can support each other. You cannot promise the exchange of support. Like, you do it for me because I'm going to do it for you. That's a big difference. So I don't know if we need to look at that and make an asterisk, or we just need to trust the process, which I agree with you, Beth. I think we just trust the process. I think people learn. I think there's going to be candidate conversations, and when folks run, they're going to ask, like, hey, what happened in Portland? How do we avoid that? So I think we'll be fine. I don't see it becoming an issue again.
Okay. Cool. Thank you for that discussion. I appreciate that point. Yeah, that was a major issue last year, and I remember that like taking up a lot of attention and time. Okay, so I think the question for you all is, you know, if there's any, these are like the major categories of violations. We have reporting issues, contribution issues, expenditure issues, and then the other kind of miscellaneous one. Are there any other major violations that, or like buckets that you want to add into this?
I can't think of any off the top of my head. Terrence, I know you have more experience than I do with like running a campaign. So if there's any that you either observed or anything that's missing, I would totally defer to you.
Hey, I'll go back to this consulting thing. If there is a violation, I'd love to see us write in. It's when we find that consultants are in violation. Like, if it was up to me, they wouldn't be able to deal with candidates that are participating in the donor match. Like, we have to have some level. I don't know if we can, Daniel, but I would love to see some level of accountability for the entities, right? The powers that be, that if they're found violating the statutes or violating the rules, that candidates who are in these programs can't work with them. I don't know if we can do that. I don't know if that's a legislative level, but I'm telling y'all, it is just such a wicked thing when regular people are working their tail off and trying. And there's no, like, if a consultant does something and we find out they shouldn't have, there's no consequence, right? Like, when does the entities, can we kick entities out of the ability to use donor match funds when they've committed continuous violations? So if we can talk about that, that's my type of thing. Like, regular people, Daniel, you said it, like, usually they just fix it, right? Like, they just want to run, they care about their city. The entities, which I think is the point of the donor match situation, is to keep them out of controlling our elections. Like, we gotta try to figure out how to create something to hold them accountable, even if that means, hey, if that entity was found in multiple violations, then you cannot use donor match fundings to pay them. You can pay them another way, but not with donor match funding. So I don't know if we can think about that, Daniel, but hey, I would like to contribute a thought like that to this thing.
That's really interesting. Yeah, so if it's like, you know, if a consultant was found or contractor was found guilty of violating the rules, and it has to be like, you know, not just an accidental violation, it has to be like a violation like of minimum like $5,000 or something like, or a minimum of like 4 instances or whatever, then campaigns cannot use their matching funds to pay them. That's a really intriguing idea. Yeah, what do you think about that, Beth?
Yeah, I've never really thought about that before, so definitely taking it in, but I think that's a really great way to, like, it's hard to hold contractors or consultants accountable because they're just kind of helping out, but not really like the people who are front facing. And I think it could be very easy for consultants to kind of exploit candidates, whether on purpose, on accident, regardless, it's still hurting candidates. I think it could be pretty easy for them to do that. Yeah, I like this idea. I'm definitely still mulling it over in my head, but definitely like very intriguing, and would, yeah, love to talk about it more and wrap my head around it more.
Yeah, Beth,
I
I
can,
just thought about it, so I gotta mull it over with you. We're on
Yeah.
the same page. I do not got this perfectly figured out, but I like the thought of like, if we have a process for candidates internally to file grievances against consulting firms, and if you're found to have 3 grievances filed against you, like anything that empower the candidates a little bit, to hold
Yeah.
firms accountable. Like internally, if you got 10 grievances and we find they're legit, like we don't want you working inside of our program anymore. So it could be something like that, Beth, more than anything, like an internal, like they were not responsive, they didn't do this. So I don't know if that adds another level, Daniel, but just a thought. Maybe this is down the road, but I would like to see something like that go.
Do I assume consultants are not like, do they have to follow OGEC standards or no?
the Oregon Government Ethics Commission. I don't know. I mean, like certainly if if they have violated the rules, like they've solicited a donation that's illegal to solicit, or they had directed spending in a way that like they're not supposed to.
Yeah.
Or in the case of like what the city does is that if they're charging a fee above fair market value, then that's definitely against the rules.
Okay.
And this is actually included in the limit subcommittee, their recommendation. But what they said is like you cannot spend matching funds on a campaign service or campaign consultant or contractor who charges you above fair market value. So they usually charge like $5,000 to build a website. They cannot charge you like $25,000 to build a website, because then you're misusing matching funds. You're like paying for something that you shouldn't be. And so that is in the rules too. I'm sure there are some Oregon Government Ethics Commission rules that do apply to them, but I don't know them specifically.
Okay, cool. Yeah, I was just curious, but I'll get a feed in now.
Well, if you want, what we could do is just work on the recommendation language together, and we can include it, and then it will go to the full IEC for their deliberation too. Which of course you all are can bring your the reasons why you felt that was important to bring on, and it can be debated there too. So, do you want to include a recommendation around this, and that means we can continue to fine tune it?
I would like to. And you, Beth, if you got it in you, okay, there's a thumbs up. Thank you.
Cool. All right, so I'm gonna write out. Let's see.
On it, Terrence.
Let's see. Campaign matching funds cannot be used to pay a campaign consultant or contractor if the consultant or contractor has violations or is found to have violated the program rules. Was found to have violated the program rules. Okay, so a couple parameters to discuss. Oh, go ahead, Beth.
Sorry, I'm gonna step away for the bathroom for 1 second.
Okay. So a couple parameters discussed, like, do you want to say if they've been found to violate the program rules in this election cycle or in like all election cycles or in like the last like 5 years?
Yeah, I would love to say like if they, however we define the parameters of having a history of violating, and we can say, notably over five violations over the last years, right? And I think we have to be, yeah, if we could create something like that, Dave, but like over the last 3 election cycles, a consulting firm has been found to have more than 5 violations, or 10 or whatever. Like, because they know, and they should know what they can and can't do. But like over this amount of violations, then they will be not able to receive matching donations for the next election cycle. Like I don't want to be kick people out forever either, Daniel. But I would love to say like there is consequences for you as a consulting firm if you have a history of violations.
Okay. Okay. So I wrote more than 5 violations in the last 3 election cycles. Is that what you said?
And then I said that they will not be able to participate in matching funds over the next election cycle.
Oh,
So we
cannot.
don't kick them out forever, but there is maybe one cycle where they're losing out access to matching funds.
So just to clarify, like if like let's say it's next year and we're in the 2026 election cycle, when you say the next election cycle, do you mean the current one we're running in, or do you mean like 2028?
Yeah, 2028. Like
Oh,
that.
okay, gotcha. Okay, Beth, you have your hand raised.
Yeah, I'm wondering if we should say more than 5 uncured violations.
Oh yeah. Mhm.
There you go, Beth. Thank you.
Because I feel like 5 could be easy to occur just on accident. So
Yeah.
if it's uncured, it kind of shows maybe more malicious intent.
Good, good. Yeah, I like that a lot. Okay, 5 in the last 3 election cycles, so that would be 5 within 6 years. Does that feel appropriate for people? 5 violations in 6 years. Uncured.
Yeah, I'm not sure like how many typical violations a consultant might occur. So if that seems reasonable to you both, then I will totally defer to you.
So yeah, that's a good point. Daniel, can we get a sense of what's the expectation of an average? Because we don't want to start you at the average, right? Because we know that just happens. But if we can get a little bit above that, good point, Beth. Then we know there's some intentionality and some rarity going on.
Well, so in the Small Town Elections program, I was there for 5 years, and that was 3 election cycles. And I can't remember if we ever had a consultant that like violated the rules. But most of the rules we had were directed at candidates. Yeah, I can't remember any time a consultant violated the rules. Which doesn't make me ask though, did you want these to be violating the program rules or violating like any rules, like campaign finance rules for the county that aren't under the program purview, or state government ethics rules, or do you just want it to be like the program rules?
What you think, Beth?
I feel like program rules makes most sense to me initially, in terms of like what our mission is on this committee, who we're trying to help, like which candidates, or not which candidates, but what community members we're really trying to lift up. And it seems like we're all pretty aligned in that, a matching program or campaign finance program is going to be helpful for more marginalized communities to run. And I think that if you're come from backgrounds more marginalized, then consultants might also prey on you a bit more. So I would say maybe program, but that's just my initial thoughts. I'm open.
I'm with you. I just wanted your thought, and I agree with you, Beth. I would love to be program focused. I think for me, Daniel, it's just having something there that's putting consultants on notice. Like, hey, we know that this is happening, and we want to make sure that you know that we will kick you out if you take advantage of people.
Yeah, I like program rules too because like we're the staff is only able to like have definitive answers about the program rules. I mean, like if a consultant violates the state ethics rules, then the program has got to like get access to that, has got to understand what the rules were, why they were violated, what the result was, and that is sometimes challenging to do. Versus if program rules, the staff already has that information available too. Okay.
And I'll also say, like, I think you bringing up that, like, in your experience with Portland's Monitor program, not seeing any like consultant violations. I think that could be maybe reason for somebody to ask, like, is this necessary to add? Which maybe this doesn't need to be said right now, but I also think that like there's a lot of it gives a lot more power maybe to candidates who are running and giving them that, you know, support on the back end that like if something were to happen. So I'm just wondering if we should maybe think that out more so before we make the recommendation to the rest of the committee. Sorry, I'm just thinking out loud right now.
Yeah, no, I appreciate that. So can you help me understand a little bit more, like what is that?
Yeah, like I could just, I wouldn't want people, whether that be on the committee, whether that be the county, to be like, this hasn't been an issue. Are we making an issue out of this? And I just want to make sure that we have like a strong response to that, because obviously it has been like, and like even though like there hasn't been as many violations maybe for consultants specifically, it doesn't mean that maybe we shouldn't look into how consultants are treating candidates. So I would just want to like, be more prepared for that, because I'm not an expert around this issue by any means. And yeah.
Yeah, good point. So I think the city didn't have, I don't remember any violations against consultants, but I think that's because most of the city's rules are directed towards candidates, which makes sense. Like what candidates can and can't do with the matching funds and how they can raise money, etc. So there just aren't that many rules about consultants in the city's, code. But I think what we could say here is that not all the rules are developed for this program. And we've like the IAC is doing kind of the big picture rules, but then there's going to be another phase, and the other phase is like the more granular administrative rules. And of course, the county board may want to pass different rules too. And then in the future, there may be like different rules to pass as well. So I guess what I'm saying is like, if the county decides to adopt rules around consultants, then this is the penalty. We've like done that part of it. We've done the penalty part. So like the city didn't have any rules around consultant or many rules around consultants, but the county does. Then we have like this action to take.
Okay, that just made so much more click in my head. So thank you for that explanation.
Yeah, excellent. Cool. Well, we have 15 minutes left. Is it okay if we move on to another topic? Okay. Great. I'm glad we were able to work on that. The final thing I wanted to show you all is the process. And actually, I do think we need a recommendation here. So that's why this is important to look over. So I'm going to walk through the process. Here's what, and like if you have access to the violations fact sheet, I think it's on, it's what page is this? Page 3. There's like a bunch of boxes with arrows on them. But I'm going to walk through what happens when a violation occurs. And this is like what the city does. But I actually think it's a pretty good model. So step 1 is the office is alerted to a potential violation. So, either the staff discovers it when they are, doing their regular reviews, or they receive a complaint, whatever the cause is. Step 1 is the office is alerted to it. Step 2 is the office contacts the campaign. And the staff usually will ask them like, hey, we saw this. Can you explain what was going on here? And we want to make sure we're seeing this right too. So give the campaign a chance to like explain. If it's pretty obviously a mistake, then the staff can just encourage the campaign to fix the problem within the cure period. Or if there is a much more serious violation, the staff may tell them like, hey, we have to actually start an investigation. But, there's usually some dialogue between the campaign and the staff before anything really starts. And then step 3 is, if the campaign cures it, which 90% of the time the campaign does, if the campaign cures it, then the staff confirms that they have and then closes the process. Nothing more to do here. But if they have not cured it, the staff may warn the campaign about the consequences of not curing it. So let's say they have 30 days to cure and it's been 25 days. That staff may say, hey, you only have 5 days left to cure it. And if you don't, then we have to issue you a penalty. So, make sure you do cure it in time. And that reminder usually goes a long way. But if it's a more serious violation, the staff may launch that investigation and start gathering evidence. So at this point, the staff is aware of the violation. The staff has talked to the campaign about it, and given them the opportunity to cure it. And the staff has either confirmed that it is cured. Oh, we lost your hands. Either the staff has confirmed it was cured, or if it's a more serious violation, they continue with the investigation. Then step 4 is if it's not cured, the staff makes the assessment. And so the staff decides whether or not to conclude the investigation with a formal finding or to establish a penalty based on the existing rubric, or issue a written notice with a penalty. So at this point, we're beyond curing. The campaigns are already missed their window where they have refused to cure it, and the staff has to decide what to do next. Hey, Terrence. So at this point, the staff has made that assessment about like what to do next now that if the violation has not been cured. And then the final thing is that the staff may issue that penalty, and then the campaign can either pay the penalty and move on, or they can file a request for reconsideration. And with the city, what that is like if a campaign is hit with a penalty, they may file a form. It's called a request for reconsideration, and they may say, hey, there's some other factors here you should have thought about, or actually I want to like show you that this really wasn't a violation after all, or we can't pay the penalty for like these reasons. So they file a request for reconsideration, and if it's reasonable, the staff will be like, okay, that's fair, and they'll just like wipe it off the plate. Or if that doesn't work, the campaign can file an appeal in court. And for the city, that only has happened one time, but it did happen. It did go to appeals. So these are the 5 steps. And I think the point is that like there is a lot of dialogue between the campaigns and staff all throughout the process. The staff is not trying to like do this within a vacuum. They're trying to get more information. They're trying to get clarity. They're giving the campaigns lots of opportunities to, provide more information or, clarify things. And the campaigns have that cure period to fix it. So that is the process. What questions do you all have about the process?
I don't have any.
Yeah, same. I think it's a good process. Like it makes sense. I think as long as communication is at the forefront, communication between like the county and candidates is at the front, which it seems like it is in this process. That would be my biggest recommendation in this process is just communication, which it's already there. So I think it sounds good.
Okay. What I'm thinking about is how the subcommittee could act on this. I'm wondering if the subcommittee should like recommend this process broadly and say like, it's further defined by administrative code or administrative rules. But it could say like this subcommittee recommends that the following process take place, and then I could like list out those steps too. How do you feel about that? Do you want to go in greater detail? Do you think that's too much detail?
Personally, I feel good about that. I think that like would you or would we, I guess when you're writing the proposal, the recommendation for the county, do you think like put this graphic in there? Would you like reference like Portland City, the code that it falls under? Like I'm just like, because I think that this makes a lot of sense. Like gives people time to cure stuff, gives like puts communication at the forefront, kind of has all the different like if it's cured, if it's not cured, if it's whatever. And I think that that's helpful for people to know that regardless of what scenario they're in. So I guess I'm just curious like how it might be referenced to ensure that hopefully it will stick closely to this model.
Yeah, I think that's a good question. We could spend a couple minutes like writing out what that would look like. I think I would rather like I would definitely I could bring this graphic to the full IAC committee and then like to any briefings with county commissioners. I'm a little reluctant to like reference the city code because I don't want to like tie us too much to that. Like if we want to go in our own direction, or if they change city code. And so let's try running something out now and see if we can get like we can represent this. So let's see.
So Daniel, are you saying like it'd be probably smart for us to create our own step by step, just in case anything changes? If we just reference city code and it changes, but it don't change kind of how we would like the county to be impacted, then we should write our own out. Am I hearing that right?
Yeah, that's right. I
Okay.
don't think we have to go into like we don't have to do everything. You don't have to like note every single part of it, but at least we want to like do like the broad outlines here. I'm sure Tim will be back in a second. Do the broad outlines. So let me just take a crack at it while we're all here together.
Yeah, even just like maybe just doing the headline of each section.
Yeah, okay, that's good.
I mean, that would make sense to me, but
Okay, so headline number 1 is the office is alerted to the office is alerted to the violation or potential violation. I was gonna kind of write this shorthand, but I'll like go back and like write it out more formally. And then the office contacts the campaign for more information, or to encourage them to cure the violation in time. And then if cured, the process closes. If not, the campaign reminds them about the cure period, or announces an investigation, or tells the campaign about an investigation. So step 3, and step 4, if still not cured, the office will conclude the investigation with a formal finding. If still not cured, the office will conclude investigation with a formal finding and issue a penalty. Campaigns can either pay the penalty file a request for reconsideration or appeal. Does that did that accurately capture it?
Yeah.
I think so.
I think that makes sense in my brain.
Okay. Okay. That's good. So I think two things to note is here we also actually need a recommendation for you all. Is number one, about the cure period, which is like what is the cure period? And so in this case, with the city, it's that campaigns have until the next reporting period ends to cure it. So the reporting period for the city is every 30 days you have to report your donations and expenditures. So if you commit the violation on the first day of that 30-day period, then you have 30 days to cure it. Or if you have well, yeah, actually, and I think it's actually, I take that back. It's always rolling. So if the if you report if you get a contribution, you report it, or let's say you get a contribution on October 10th, then you have to report it 30 days after October 10th. But if you get the contribution on October 15th, you have to report it 30 days after October 15th. So it's like you always have like 30 days to cure it. And then when it's closer to the election, the reporting period changes to 7 days. And so then you would have 7 days to cure it too.
Do you
So
know
that would
when
be,
that kicks in?
yeah, it's within 6 weeks of the election.
Okay, cool.
Is that what it is? So that's how the city defines this cure period. How do you feel about that?
I like that a lot. I'm wondering if maybe, so I like the 30 days for the bulk of it. I'm wondering if for like weeks, how do I say this? I think 7 days for maybe like 4 weeks out from the election makes sense. And then maybe for week like 6 and 5 out from the election, maybe we could do like 10. So it's a little more gradual in case, like, I feel like that might be easier for, maybe not.
Okay, 6 to 4 weeks.
But in my head, that kind of just, I think would make it slightly more,
Yeah. Okay. 7 days. I'm actually gonna text Terrence real quick. Come back and like, make sure he votes on this. Because you can't vote without it.
Yeah. But yeah, I also don't know if that would make it, if that's like too many numbers for people to keep track of. Like, I wouldn't want to make it overly confusing.
Yeah, because I'm trying to think about this. So like if it's in the final 6 weeks, it's state law. They have to report well, I don't know if that's necessarily true, but in the final 6 weeks, if you have to report every 7 days.
Oh, you do?
But yeah, but then here you have 10 days to cure it. Then that means it would not show up in the report until 2 weeks out. I don't think that's like the biggest deal.
Do you think that would be, if the final 6 weeks reporting period is every 7 days, do you think it would be more confusing for candidates to keep in mind the reporting versus the cure periods if they're different from each other?
It could be like another layer to add on, especially because it's so different from what the city was.
And it's like the final 6 weeks are so stressful in the election that, I wouldn't want there to be any more accidental violations because they couldn't keep numbers straight.
Yeah.
So in that case, 7 days makes sense to me.
Okay.
Just for like clarity and ease.
I appreciate the suggestion though. I think that makes sense. I get where you're coming from.
Yeah.
7 days. Okay. Cool. Well, if Terrence does come on, then we can do this vote. I don't know where he is.
Stay on for a couple more minutes too.
Let me look at my calendar and make sure I have the next meeting. Okay, I don't have it until 10:30. Okay. Okay, and then is there anything else we need to discuss while I have you all available? No, I think that's pretty much it. I'm gonna give him a call and see if I can I just want to make sure we get this vote. We're so
Yeah.
close. Okay, he's gonna be right back in a second. Cool. Okay. God. Hey, Terrence.
Hey, y'all. Sorry about that.
That's good. Thanks for joining us. We just need a couple more minutes because we can do the vote now.
Okay, let's
I'm
get
gonna.
it.
What do you say?
No, okay, perfect. I'm
Okay,
here.
great. Okay. So I'll show you the fact sheet. So we have 3 recommendations. Recommendation number 1 is campaign matching funds. So we can just move this thing out of the way. Okay. Oh, perfect. There we go. Campaign matching funds cannot be used to pay a campaign consultant or contractor if the consultant or contractor was found to have violated the program rules, more than 5 uncured violations in the last 3 years, and cannot receive matching funds in the current or next election cycle, or actually in the next election cycle, I think is what we said. And so that's any fine tuning of that language before we have a vote on it. Okay. In the case of a violation, this is a process. I'm gonna write this language out more formally. But step 1, the office is alerted to the potential violation. Step 2, the office contacts the campaign for more information or encourages them to cure the violation. Step 3, if the violation is cured, the process closes. If not, the campaign reminds them about the cure period and tells the campaign about a potential investigation. Step 5, if the violation is still not cured, the office holds and then concludes an investigation with a formal finding and issues a penalty. And then step 6 is campaigns can either pay the penalty, file a request for reconsideration, or appeal. That is an overview of it, and like it'll be further, we'll further define it in administrative rules. But how does that sound for you all for like a broad recommendation?
Sounds
I like
good
it.
to me.
And I was like, I'm from Portland, but I was laughing because I'm just like,
And then finally, Terrence, while you're going, we talked about this, a cure period. For the city, that is 30 days from the violation. And then when you get closer to the election, when you're 6 weeks within the election, it's 7 days of the violation. Because that aligns with the reporting period. So that's when campaigns are reporting their donations and expenditures anyway. So that's what we outlined for a cure period. How do we all feel about that as the timeline for the cure period for this program?
Works for me. I feel great
Okay.
about it.
One fun thing I actually I forgot to bring up is the question of complaints. And so what the city does, which I think is great, is it says the only people that can file complaints are other campaigns. Because what happens typically is when you don't have that rule, is that campaigns get their like friends or their allies to file complaints. And so that way they don't look like they're being like litigious. But they do that and they weaponize it. So that way, like, once they file a complaint, then they can issue a press statement being like, complaint is filed against this opponent. And that's it. And even if the complaint is dismissed or is frivolous entirely, they still get a good news story out of it. And so the idea is, what if you just limit the complaints to the campaigns? Then if they want to file it, they can, but they have to like own up to it. They can't just like hide behind a friend and get them to do it too. And it reduces the number of complaints as well. So that way it's not just like weaponized all the time. How do you all feel about that?
Yeah, I'm with you. I agree. The whole trying to make it a news spectacle when it can be nothing. Any way we can do that is huge. Like to protect people campaigns for sure.
Beth, how do you feel about it?
Yeah, I agree. Especially again, thinking about like making sure that like I could see people, being racist or whatever and trying to like hurt candidates from marginalized backgrounds, and it's maybe less likely to happen if it's from another campaign, because that would be a really terrible look for them too. So yeah, I agree.
You have to be a little more judicious about it. Yeah. Okay, well, that's the recommendation. Are you all ready to hold a vote? Okay, great. Thank you so much. Okay. So we actually need a motion to vote, and then we need a second, even though there's only two of you here.
Beth, you go ahead, Beth.
I motion to or move to vote on our recommendations.
I'll second.
Okay. In the vote, Beth.
Aye.
Terrence.
Aye.
Great. Thank you all so much. That was tremendous. We got through so much. So I think that's it. I don't think there's any real reason to meet again in the subcommittee. We of course have more IAC meetings, including one today. And we'll be like discussing these and at the full IAC. But thank you for taking the time to like work through this and like develop a great set of recommendations.
Appreciate y'all. Thanks for being patient with me.
Oh no, I'm glad to have you. Yeah. All right, take care.
Bye.
Appreciate you guys. Bye.
Bye.